see about getting this show started. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Many of you already know me. My name is Emily Bentley. I work with Kanab City. I'm the director of our municipal museums. And of course, tonight you're going to hear some fantastic stories from some multi-generational farming and ranching families that we have here in Kanab. But before we get into that, I want to thank the people who make these types of local events possible. And those are our dedicated volunteer members of our Kanab City Heritage and Historic Preservation Board. So we have some of them here with us tonight. Some are only here with us in spirit. But so first of all, I'm going to introduce Joyce Bush, who you'll be hearing more from. She is our board chair. We also have Spencer Young here with us in the front row. If he'd like to stand up and take a bow and say hello to the touring public. We also have Susan Erickson, and then also Niall Willis, who is here with us this evening. And of course, none of the work this board does would be possible without the wonderful city councilman that we work with, who is Chris Heaton. He really regrets he can't be here tonight. He has been so excited about this program since we first started talking about it. Unfortunately, they had an unforeseen circumstance and he was called out of town at the last minute. And so again, I know not only would he love to be here because he's seen this program being planned, but also he was here, he was going to represent the Heaton family. So again, someone else who's incredibly valuable to the work that we do. We couldn't do it without him, but unfortunately not with us tonight. Now, who is with us tonight are all of these lovely people here to represent their different families. So I'm actually going to let them just take a moment and introduce their names. And also I heard your son may be joining us here in a few minutes. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and go ahead and tell us your son's name? So when he comes in, we can all say,
I'm Bruce Bundy, and lived here all my life, and my son's supposed to be coming, Gavin Bundy, who's helps on the ranch and taking it over, so hopefully he gets here.
All right, I'm Colton Johnson. I'm Wally's grandson. He couldn't make it tonight, so he had me and my dad come.
I'm Troy Johnson. I'm Wally's oldest son. This is what happens in farming and ranching is the old rancher says, there you go. You go to the meeting. So that's why I'm here.
I'm Danny Little. I'm the son of Lane Little, been here since Kanab began, the Littles have. So we own and operate Little Livestock.
I'm Copeland Little. I'm the son of Danny, and I'm the grandson of Lane Little. Yeah, I love it.
all right, well, thank you so much for coming. I do want to say one more thing though. We talked about the life of a rancher. This was actually a program that we had initially started talking about for earlier in the year. But of course, we know there was the fires, there was a lot going on at that time. It just goes to show how much the people before you do live off the land, do live by nature, and they'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Joyce to get started.
Thank you all. Thanks for being here. What I'd like to do is we have 5 questions. You already got them in advance. I think one of you got some, everybody's got little notes, and that's perfect. We're going to start with question number 1. You'll have 5 minutes. Spencer is our timer. He has a little sign that says 1 minute. And then
Maybe one of them at church.
And then he has a sign that says, thank you. So you don't have to stop the minute he says 1 minute, but you need to know that your time's coming. So the first question is, and Bruce, you're on the hot seat because you're the bunting. How many generations has farming and ranching been in your family? And please include the names and all history about whoever was involved. And I heard this morning from your sweet wife that you've been doing some studying. So Bruce, we're ready.
Okay, well, we've been 4 generations in down to me. My great-great-grandfather, James Lovett Bundy, was born in England in 1832, and he was a shoemaker over there, an expert in shoemaker, and then and also over there he migrated to to the United States in 1853, and when he became here, he was while he lived there, he knew Samuel. He met Samuel Smith, which was the prophet Joseph Smith's son, and he spent a little bit of time with them, and he was converted to the church in England, to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and was a faithful member, here. And he said that meeting Samuel Smith made his testimony of growth the church a lot stronger, and he knew that the church was true because of having that experience. In 1953, he was asked to come to Kanab, Utah, by Brigham Young to help. Anyway, while he was in there, he was asked his family and then come to Utah, come across the plains with some elders, and arrived in Utah in May of 1859, and became a shoemaker in Utah. He was an expert shoemaker, and he said a lot of the cowboys spent time going to him because of his expertise and his expert in learning about leather. And then my great-grandfather, James Ebenezer Bunting, was born in Salt Lake City while they were living in Salt Lake City, and he had a fine home and had his family and there in Salt Lake City. And he also was an expert shoemaker. He got it from his father, James Lovett. And many of the people in Utah came to his shoemaking because of his expertise he had in Salt Lake City. And in 1870, he was asked by Brigham Young to get up and move to Kanab, Utah, and help settle Kanab. He come down and worked with, asked to come and help. Yeah, you're right here. He was asked to come and help Bishop Levi Stewart to help settle Kanab. And when they moved to Kanab, they lived in the fort of Kanab. They had places where they lived because of the unsettlement, because of the Indians and everything. I'm not sure just where the old fort was. I've been told many stories. It was out across the creek. It was where the old fort hall was, and it was down by the fort in Kanab, but I guess there's been a few around here. Anyway, it was finally destroyed there. And while living here, he, like I said, he done a lot of shoemaking. He also, James Ebenezer, bought a ranch. He was married to Edith Swap.
Thank you. You can give them some of my time. It's ultimately the story.
Anyway, he's married to Edith Swap. He married Edith Swap. I think it was 1890, 9/22 of 1890, and they were married in the St. George Temple. And then right after they was married, he went up to Sink Valley and bought a ranch. The ranch today that they bought is the one that Sorensen had, that Earl Sorensen has up there. They bought that, and a few years later, they thought it was, I heard they thought it was pretty cold up there, and a lot of snow and everything, so they moved down to Johnson Canyon and bought the ranch there, and started farming, dry farming, because the only water that was there was what would come down the wash. You get it in the spring and in the fall and whenever it rained. And I know that they raised a lot of rye, and they raised cattle. In other words, my dad took over the farm and divided up, and my dad homesteaded Cutler, and he raised sheep the beginning of the time, and then went into cattle. And we're raising, and we're still farming, ranching today on Johnson Canyon up on the White Ledges, which they call Cutler and Johnson. And we, later on, they bought a permit out on the Kaibab Mountain, which is called Village Canyon, where we take the cattle in the summertime. That's history. And I hopefully, when I pass away, that my son Gavin takes it over. It's his. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Good job. CJ, are you the next one up?
Sure.
Do you want me to read the question again, or you're ready to go?
No, I think I'm ready to go.
Okay.
So I guess the history with the Johnson starts with Ezekiel. He'd be my sixth grade grandpa. So I'd be, and he didn't make it to Utah. He actually got killed by the mob in Nauvoo. And he didn't join the church, but he was defending the church. He had a handful of boys. They came and settled all over the West, I mean, Arizona, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Nevada. But Joel and Nephi both came out, you know, same as all the Mormon pioneers, and they brought sheep and cattle with them when they came. Their dad Ezekiel had been farming in Massachusetts, so he stayed in New York before that. And they eventually got asked by Brigham Young to go down and settle around Carolyn and Cedar City. And specifically Joel's job was to watch the livestock for the members down there. And they settled Enoch. It was called Johnson's Fort back then, which is now Enoch, Utah. And then they went down and settled Virgin outside of Zion. And after that, they settled a place called Hillsdale, which is just north of Hatch. They're in kind of a group of cottonwoods on the Sevier that you'll see between the Bryce turnoff and Hatch. And after a while, Brigham Young said, we've got a spot for your family to kind of settle and call home, because Joel's getting pretty old at this point. Nephi had a son, Joel Hills Jr. So all three of them, along with Joel's brothers, come to Johnson, and they settle on the church ranch and then all up and down Johnson Canyon. I have a story from Nephi's, would be my fourth grade grandpa. I guess in Utah, that would be, if you count my kids, that'd be 9 generations. So I'd be 8, my dad's 7, Wally 6. But Bandana, oh, this one's on my phone. It's kind of a funny story. She'd be Nephi's wife, and he moved her out to Johnson, and they lived in a tent. And he'd go help guys all over the place. She was there alone a lot of the time. And it was the 4th of July, and she was mad. It didn't feel very festive out there. They said she was a great shot with a pistol. And she decided to get up and start shooting the pistol to celebrate the 4th of July. And all the men that were there came running. They thought that the Indians were attacking them. And so she said, no, I just thought it was time to celebrate the 4th of July. But they dug out a cellar from the spring in the rocks there, and I think it's still there, either at the church ranch or across on the map prints and stuff. But I mean, going down from there, Joel Hills had a son, Lamar, and which would be, I believe, Joyce's grandpa, right? And my grandpa's grandpa, and Lamar's son Sylvan, my great grandpa. So that's kind of how it goes generation wise. But he said Lamar, back when Lamar was ranching, they had big community allotments, and they'd take the cows from the ranch. They'd go camp at Seeps, and he said Trevor Leach would be with them. He named them Wayne Robinson, I think Graydon Robinson, if I can read my handwriting. Well, Wayne Robinson's dad, Malcolm. Graydon Robinson, Foot Hamlin, and Trevor Leach would camp with them there, and then they move them south up through Rock Canyon, just kind of the foot of the mountain there. That's where the water was, and they go up around Wild Horse Park, which is kind of where that state shed is up on the Kayak. And that was the winter permit, and they bring them back down. In the fall, they gather them up around Mill Creek, right under the Peaks. And so they do that, and then they take them up to Marysville. Back then, they take the calves up to Marysville, because that's where the train was. And so it's horse-drawn. They get a horse and wagons, and they drive them up to Marysville. And there's a bunch of freight packed all their, it's like going to Costco, I guess, or they bring all their stuff home, cut wood on the way home and get coal in Alton and bring it all, kind of make a big trip out of it back then. So I might have got into the second question a little bit. I took all my dad's times.
I would just add that, I think in the beginning, we ranched and farmed around 1,400 acres. And we're down to about 1,175 because, Sylvan sold some of that off, some to family and some to others. And I think a lot of the reason he did that was because, farming is tough and the income is tough. So, anyway, I started out there about 6 years ago, going as much as I could. I left my job on a medical disability. I have a vision problem. It wasn't that I couldn't see myself going to work. It's just that I can't see. So it makes it a bit of a challenge for me out there, but, that's how I ended up, going out more full-time, to help my dad. He's now 81. His two sisters, Jean and Les, are out there, and between them and my wife and the rest of the family, my kids, in-laws that I have with my daughters, we try to do what we can do to keep things moving along. So we have that's close to about a 10,000 acre BLM allotment that we depend on in the winter for feed.
Thank you. I just have to put in a little plug. My grandmother, was a bunting, so Bruce and I are related, and you already heard that I'm related to these Johnsons. And now, Danny, it's your turn, that looks like.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Heritage Council for putting this on. I think sometimes we kind of forget how Kanab became Kanab. And I'm 5th generation rancher here in Kanab. My great-great-grandfather helped settle Kanab, with Levi Stewart and all those, James A. Little. He helped settle a little bit of Parowan over Eagle Valley, Nevada, came down through that country. Originally came from New York. Well, originally the family came from Gotland, Scotland area. By way of New York, he lost his dad at a very young age. He was farmed out at 6 and 7 years old, to a different family. And, you know, this kind of thing happened all the time. And anyway, long story short, he ended up marrying Brigham Young's sister, and Brigham Young sitting down through Parowan, Kanab, and that's kind of how it all starts. But we run about 250 cows in this area in Johnson Canyon and out on Clark Bench. My dad, like I said, is Lane Little. His dad was Rel Little. These old ranchers, they didn't have it easy. My grandpa he was 7 years old and had smallpox out at the Koreatown site. They left him there for a couple weeks by himself. They would put food through the door, because nobody wanted to contract the smallpox. So it's just, the ranching lifestyle is something pretty precious to us. But yeah, I don't know if Cope wants to say anything, but this is my son. He's he'd be the 6th generation. He gets his name Copeland from Willis Copeland. That's my great-grandfather. That actually, my great-great-grandfather started the cattle business, but he was the one that really took it off and started, getting on the land and homesteading stuff. So.
Thank you. Bruce, you're on the hot seat again.
Okay, it says what was farming and ranching like when I grew up. Well, it was a ball. I can say that we had a lot of fun on the ranch because that was really small. When I went to school here, there were probably around 1,000, 1,200 people. And it was really, we had a good time. My dad let me do sports, but he let me know that the weekends I had to spend on the ranch. I spent many hours on the ranch with my dad. I was fortunate to be able to be over there with him, and we stayed in Johnson in the old house, and later on in our life, around 1953, the 50s right there, we bought Scoot-and-Paw, bought Mark Swapp's place up there, and then we moved up to Scoot-and-Paw. And my dad used to raise horses, And he used to like to raise them and sell them. In fact, real little used to, Danny's and, grandfather used to like to buy the horses because we would break them. And my dad, I remember we'd snug them to another horse and I'd get on them and ride them, and because that way they couldn't buck very hard. And my dad always told me, he says, son, you'll never have to worry about getting bucked off as long as you don't get your butt up in the air. That's true today, even in the rodeos. What's that? And another thing my dad was famous on, we worked on the ranch a lot. And when I didn't behave and whenever I do it, he never got mad very often, but when he got mad, you knew it. And my sister said that. He would always get me up early in the morning, take me over to the ranch and put me on a darn grubbing hole. And that's a hole that you go around and grub rabbit brush. We had a lot of rabbit brush to grub. And he told me, he says, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, how do you expect to have the time to do it over? He worked hard and we worked hard on the ranch. And we would come home on Wednesdays and Wednesday nights and Saturday nights. And we was here Sunday and go back Monday morning. They raised a big garden here in Kanab. I was raised in that home. I'm just up above the Shiloh. And that's where my grandfather Ebenezer's home still standing there. It's that big red brick home. And I loved, farming, and I loved working, I think, with my dad and all that. Gavin said if he got anything to say about what farming like to him.
Yeah, hello, I'm Gavin, going in late, fifth generation. So the question, my spectrum's a lot smaller than the veteran guys here, but I remember as a kid, our cattle herd was mostly Hereford, and right when I started remembering, we transitioned more to the Angus, which is a bigger breed of cattle. I remember then we used to haul cattle in trailers. When we did haul, typically we trailed them from everywhere we went, from the Kanab up to Johnson. And we still do in the fall, but in the spring we haul them. But we had cattle trucks then, and now we've got stock trailers and haul more. So time management has changed a lot. Seems like we're always crunched for time. Having to work a full-time job plus trying to keep the ranch going. That's kind of the norm for everybody now, it seems like, more or less. I remember a lot of times Saturdays was just a ranch day growing up. Like, it wasn't Saturday morning cartoons, it was you're loading up and getting out. Which I appreciate at the time. I probably didn't, but I appreciate it now. That it taught me a lot of good work ethics.
We kind of go to a little bit about, well, let me just stop and start again. CJ, are you ready to tell us about what it was like when you were growing up, or is that?
I took notes from my grandpa on this,
Okay,
so we'll see if I can read my handwriting. They're kind of all over the place. So this is the one where I took notes from last night. He said growing up back then it was all horsepower. They had a horse-drawn mower, a team of pinholes and a dump rake, and they just forked everything. He would have been little doing that, like 4 or 5 years old, he said. And then finally they converted the rake to drive behind a tractor. He said they lived at their ranch in the summers at the old ranch house. It had a double fireplace, and they'd sleep on one end, and then his mom and dad and grandpa were on the other end. And grandpa had a sourdough start, and he said they make biscuits and up on the stove top, and that's what they snack on all day. They ate that all the time. But they put harnesses on the pinholes, and him and his brother Bruce would hold on to the collar, and then they'd pop off the load stuff. And then finally they bought a round baler. This would probably be the early 50s. And he said it took forever because you had to stop at every single bale, put it in neutral, and then get the bale. So it just took a really long time. they had they were dry farming rye, hundreds of bales that they were dry farming, and they'd go along with a hay hook and pile those up. Finally, in the late '60s, they said they bought an old International swather. And then bought a second tractor. It was a Ford Jubilee with a 3-point hookup. Instead of that point, they'd have Grandma Ferris drive, and the boys would walk alongside, and they were still holding the bale wagon on by hand back then. But let me see, I just gotta make sure I'm not missing anything you wanted me to miss on this other stuff. And I was gonna add to that last question, another interesting part of history, that the Johnston brought a bunch of Angora goats out, and that was a big deal out on the sand hills around the way, and White Pocket for a long time. They'd use the Angora for, like, it's not wool, it's called mohair, and that's what they were kind of farming them for. There's kind of some neat history out there. But then eventually they quit going up the Kanab and up above Scootum and have the allotments along Nephi pasture and kind of north of Johnson Lakes and all that, and up in Long Canyon. And you kind of talk about going and camping in Long Canyon when they'd gather and stuff up under the lights when he was growing up, in Nephi pasture. I believe Nephi pasture is called Nephi pasture because of Nephi Johnson. That's kind of what he had to add about how it was when he was growing up. And I said, it doesn't seem like things are that much different, because that rake that he had me on in the summer, I think that's a Pioneer rake, and I don't know how it even holds up.
It just doesn't have a horse drawn it. So I was probably close to, I went out, so my dad worked a full-time job and he tried to help. My great grandpa was still alive, when I was a young man, but he wasn't, or a young boy, but he wasn't farming anymore. Sylvan was farming. And when I got out there, as a young boy, I just probably was in the way, and my grandkids go out now, they ride 4-wheelers. I used to drive an old Ford F9 tractor around or hour after hour after hour as my entertainment, and they let me do it. And I was probably 8, 9 years old. Our place is just north of the old movie set. That's our south boundary, private. And I remember being a kid, not much younger than Copeland, and getting stuck when monsoon season would roll around. The road wasn't paved up the canyon. And I remember being stuck a couple of times, there by the church farm, having to, Sylvan had an old, blue Dodge Power Wagon, and later on a big red travel, and we had to be pulled out or winched out to get on up to the place. And I remember being young enough that we would walk along the bale wagon or just a flatbed trailer, and we would hay hook the hay up on the wagon. And as I got a little older, it seemed like to me Ferris did more of the hard work and Sylvan just kind of directed things. She worked hard, and she was really good at keeping him in his place. You knew that when Grandma said he needed to knock it off, he would say, "Mama," and she'd say, "Dude, don't call me Mama, just knock it off." So, but it was great. I loved going out as a kid, and I enjoyed it. So it's changed a lot, but that's kind of what it was like when I was younger.
Okay, I still feel pretty young, but as I start thinking about some of the things we did when I was young, such as we still had a sycamore, pulling behind the tractor when I was a kid, and we'd rake it up with an old rake and have the bell wagon or the bell, not the bell wagon like today, but the kinds you loaded up. And so those were all good times when we were farming. But the ranching side of it, ranching has evolved, but it hasn't evolved, right? It's still ranching. There's still certain things that you have to do to make beef production. And as far as, just the everyday life has changed. We have better pickups, we have better vehicles. We can go to Clark Bench and do a lot of work in one day, where my grandpa would would go out there and stay for 10 days because they would ride out and ride back on a horse. And so that's changed a lot. In my lifetime, I've just seen, progress as far as, breeds. You know, Gavin talked a little bit about the breeding. I think everybody ran Hereford cattle in the early days, and the breeding has changed. That's what I've seen. The biggest is, just more awareness of different breeds and how to get better production level out of your cattle. And, obviously there are supplements. You know, the supplements have changed since I was a little kid. We used to put out salt, maybe a little bit of cottonseed meal or something like that. And now we use some good proteins and minerals and different things like that. But yeah, it's just, something I love. Coke's still growing up, so I don't know if he has anything on that. Oh, we'll get him on the next question.
This is awesome. Bruce, you're on the hot seat again. What's farming and ranching like now?
Well, I can say in some ways it's a lot easier, and in some ways it's a lot harder. Like they talked about, I can remember when we had sickle mowers and when we used to go up Johnson Canyon in a road that wasn't gravelled. I can remember when it wasn't gravelled at all, and then it got gravelled to the point of the mountain, which is right there by Bon Hay before you start up the canyon. From then on, it was a muddy mess. We'd have to put chains on our trucks or else get up there in the early morning to get back on Saturdays. And now you drive up there on a nice gravel road, on a nice oiled road, and our farming equipment is sometimes is better. We've improved a little bit on some of it. We don't use sickle mowers, we use swathers and balers. We don't have to pitchfork the hay into a trailer and haul it down. And I can remember one story about my dad. He used to drive the tractor down with a wagon where we pitchforked the hay on, and we kind of had to go around a real deep sandy spot. So he'd have to get the tractor going to get around. Well, he hit the wagon over, and all the hay went off in the wash. And so we told him we wasn't going to shovel it out of that wash. And anyway, we forgive him on that. Today we've got gravel in that road, and it's just that our equipment is a little bit easier, but it's not the top-notch equipment that you have for farming now. And as far as the cattle goes, we have better equipment to take care of them. Where I can remember, we used to ride our horses from Johnson clear up on the White Ledge and around and gather them. Now today we haul them up there there's a fairly good road up there, and we got grills up there. We go up and grill them, and it's a lot easier to get them as far as that is today. And it's just that as far as watering and stuff, I can remember that my dad and then we put trees in the wash to get the water out of Johnson, and we'd shovel out the ditch, and it'd rain up above, and the water would come down and wash our ditch out, fill it up with mud again. I asked my dad, I says, "Can't you see that it's raining up there? Why are you making us dig it out?" I guess he had us dig it out because he wanted us to build character. But the next morning, we'd be up there digging it out again and getting it out. But today we got a nice cement dam. All we have to do is if we get up there to shut it down and let the water go down the wash, because you can't control those big floods, and then you just have to watch it in the rain when it's coming down. If it gets too big, you have to shut it off and put it in. So farming now and ranching is, in some ways a lot more funner. In some ways it's a lot more harder too, but it was good. I'll let Gavin finish it.
Yes, you talked a lot on kind of the physical parts. Some of my notes that I thought that I've seen in my short time farming and ranching has been the federal administration pendulum changing. It seems like every so many years, we hit a spot where we're doing okay as a rancher, and then the pendulum swings, and then it's like, oh my gosh, we're like in for a ride. So we've in our area, we've had challenges with the Endangered Species Act, removing people from the land, it feels like, from an agriculture standpoint. The heritage of us ranchers and families working the land and being part of the land. I've seen, some challenges there, with the monuments and those coming in, special interest groups. And then, equipment and energy costs, the 20-ish years that I've been involved, it's making a big swing, in that aspect. So that's, something that I've seen now. But it's still enjoyable, still like doing it.
So I'll just go, I only have a few more notes, he talked about how a long time ago, they had a running iron when they branded, like you draw the brand on there. Now they have, just all the equipment's changed. Now, if you want, you can have electric plugged in branding iron, 4-wheelers. Then talk about how there's a well, you've got a well up in Long Canyon now to bring water and pumps, and he's barely hooked it up on solar, so now he doesn't have to drive up there and add fuel to it and get it started. So there's things that make it more convenient, but then I guess one thing I'd add that I've seen is just, it's at least a worry, it's government regulations with the monument, with wilderness areas. Just always the constant threat of it is a stressor and a worry, and there's things that you'd like to improve on your permits that you're not able to improve on very easily, if at all, which makes things less profitable and also just harder to pull off. So
I've seen it change from when we worked with cattle. When I was a young kid, we worked with horses. Sylvan had a horse that I loved to watch work. You get her in the corral, and he didn't have to do a lot of reining. He didn't have to do a lot of work. She'd do the work. Much like cutting now. She would just drop her head, and she'd get a cow or a calf to go. He could get her to just pretty much cut the cattle for him. And it was fun to watch. It's not fun to watch now because we do all of ours on 4-wheelers. And it's a lot more difficult, or foot. And I have to tell them I'm getting older and I don't have the wind to chase like I did when I was a Colts age maybe. And it's a lot harder that way, but I've seen the changes. The bad thing, the thing with the government is the creation of the monument, it's made things more difficult. But it's the government's kind of a two-edged sword. There are more programs that you can take advantage of that help you. It's a lot of donated labor to match the money, but that's changed, I think, from the past. There are programs available. They have what they call drought insurance now. I would go to church and I couldn't figure out why we were having a fast for rain, and they'd ask the farmer to pray, and he'd never asked for it to rain. I couldn't figure out why. Then I found out about drought insurance, and that's why, because it doesn't pay if it rains. So I got to quit asking the farmer to pray for rain. But I think it's come a long way. It's hard to watch when you get on YouTube and you try to figure out how you're going to fix this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment, and you see all these big fancy pieces of equipment to farm with. We farm around 60 acres and harvest 60 acres of hay through the summer. We water it with wheel line, and then we mechanically harvest it and put it up and feed it. In the last 3 years, I think we've bought hay to get us through the winter time because there's not enough feed on the allotment, or we move them off when they calve and bring them down where we can keep track of them. So, and we do that all, trap them with water, and then load them on a trailer and haul them down. So we're not using any horses out on our permit or on our private up in Long Canyon to gather. We just trap them with water, and it's much easier that way. So.
Okay, I'm gonna let Hope answer this one.
Oh, I don't know, I've heard my dad tell stories, especially my grandpa tells stories, and I'm, geez, yeah, I have it easy. I'm kind of the technology guy at the ranch. I like to see what can be more improved. And I just think it's cool how we've come so far. We have a drone that we use out at the ranch. You can be sitting at one place and I can fly it up and fly to the water and check it in 5 minutes. And where it would, it's just so easy and, things like that, things like running a pickup out to, drop lick and stuff like that. I hear my grandpa tell stories about him or his dad to go on horseback everywhere. And we still, gather on horseback, but I think it's cool. We've come a long way, electric branding irons, stuff like that, but that's all I have.
Well, this is my right-hand man, he's the last one left, but, he's only 15, I know he looks a lot older than that, but he is kind of our tech guy, and he said, Dad, we have to get a drone. We've got to get a drone, we're spending way too much time hunting for cows and checking water, and so he kind of conned us into that, but, it has changed a lot since I was a kid that way, but, you know, it's a family event, that's why ranching is so good, and that's why we love it, and, anyway, yeah, ranching now is, you know, we still ride and we rope and we brand, and, sometimes people are like, why are you roping your calves? You have a nice calf shoot right there, and I said, because we like to do it, and so I don't know if Colt likes to do it, because I'm on the horse now, I'm not on the ground, but, anyway, that's kind of what it's like for us now.
Farming and ranching going in the future, and I just heard Copeland, that's the things that I've heard, pretty exciting. Bruce, you're on.
I don't know, that's a tough question to answer. I think it depends on a lot, like they say, we depend a lot on federal ground. We have a lot of our permits, we only run our cattle on our private ground for, approximately 2 months, and then we depend on, private ground like up at BLM in Johnson Canyon, and then on the forest in the winter time, out on the north end of Kaibat, where they like to burn off every 5 years. And we can't go out there this year because of the fire is coming back, so we're having to buy hay this year to feed our cattle. But where I see it going is it all depends on the people in Kane County, how they want to pick up for our value, what we have had in the past. I don't know, I can just see I love farming and I love ranching, and I'm gonna do all I can to keep my permits and my cattle and stuff going, the ranch going, because I like to say here, I love it. I like to see things grow. I like to see hay. I love to see the spring when the grass starts up and things revegetated. And also I get tired of it and I like to see the fall come when everything kind of dies down and you can relax a little bit after you get rid of your calves. So I hope that we can keep having ranching and farming, because it's like they said here, the reason is I love it. I love the work, and I love to see my family work on it. Sometimes my grandkids say, Dad, thank Grandpa, why don't you get a bale wagon? Why don't you do this? And I says, hey, you haul those bales because it builds character. I'll let him say how he feels going.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. If we had a crystal ball, it'd make life a lot easier, but, yeah, there's, I hope that it continues, there's so many things, working with and against the ranching and farming, through the whole country. I was listening to Bill today on the generational, succession on family ranches and farms, and since 2017 it was over 100,000, like closer to 200,000 ranches and farms have been sold off within that short amount of time, just due to many different aspects, but a lot of it's, the prices of land and, just commodities. People are having a hard time staying in ag, so, I had a couple notes here, if I can find it, there's the beef quality, we've touched on that some. The quantity and quality, I feel over time has become better. There's a lot of people that have kind of a movement that have, going back to locally grown or more organic, which is great for us farmers. And then there's the contradiction part of like the lab grown stuff that, you know, it's a fear of the industry too. But, yeah, I think just with the support, local all throughout, you know, that's gonna keep ranching and farming alive. Technology was hit some too. I really like the advancement of technology has helped a bunch in different ways. It mentioned the drone. There's the shock collars now for cattle. A lot of people are going to those. And yeah, there's always something new to learn in technology. That's my one.
So going off my notes from my grandpa, he said he worried about it continuing to phase out for lots of reasons. Generational succession is one. Families, it's hard whenever you go from one generation to the next for families to figure that out. But also as places develop, it kind of relates to the next question, why do you do it? Why do you do it? Like you said, they don't make any more land. And that land for many families is a sanctuary for recreation and work to continue on a way of life that they identify with and is their heritage. But if neighbors are to sell and it develops and you're surrounded by something that looks totally different than what you've had, I think you see it in St. George, and you're maybe seeing it around here, that people almost say, well, what's the point? This isn't what it used to be. We're not getting the same benefit out of it, not financially, but not even recreationally. We're just not getting the same experience on the land that we had, and you see people kind of say, well, there's no point now once we're surrounded by subdivisions and things like that. And then there's just he worries about the kind of the threats of, like we've talked about already with monuments and government regulations. But I do see things also getting easier with technology, like Colton talked about. We finally, I think now that my oldest is there, he's starting to talk to my grandpa and into embracing the technology at least a tiny bit, or maybe just doing it. I don't know if my grandpa is embracing it, or if we're just doing it. I'll let my dad maybe talk more about that.
Wally's not a technology guy, and he doesn't trust many of the things that I throw at him, so I throw him in advance and let him cogitate on it for a while until he decides maybe it'll work. But I see it becoming much more challenging. Like Colton talked about, sometimes you just need local government to step in and say, we're not going to allow these certain places to be developed uncommercialized. There were 90 acres just sold to the west of us, that on a farm that used to be Alvin Judd's family's farm, and is now owned by a Texas oil man. And he sold 90 acres to a big resort. That's gonna change the dynamic of the canyon. Right now, Bruce talked about, you can drive up the canyon with paved road. Well, that paved road gets a lot of vehicles on it, long, big equipment, a lot of people just flying up and down the canyon, trying to get to different sites that are, King County is a beautiful place, and there's a lot of sites that people want to go and see. We've been having conversation with the tour companies lately about taking care of the roads, because these ranchers depend on access to get their cattle in and out. And many of the roads have been tore up so bad, you cannot do that with a horse, a trailer and a truck.
And the roads exist because of the ranch.
Yeah, the roads exist because of ranching. And granted, I own side by side, I use it, but, I talked to my brother-in-law on the fish lake, they had 800 miles of trail. And every year there was 50 more miles of unauthorized trail being created. So all of this growth and expansion comes at a cost. And my feeling is that if we don't hang on to our culture, our heritage, with farming and ranching, the dynamic of this whole area changes. It's important. I think there's probably many of you in here who saw Johnson Canyon as it was and as it is now. It's changed a lot. And I hope that local government at the county level particularly will do what they can to limit and protect some of these places, because I believe it's important, not just for farming and ranching, but for the community as a whole. Thank you.
So I have a saying that I tell my kids, and I say, I can't remember. If you always do what you've always did, you always get what you always got. And we try to apply that in the ranching industry too. And so about 3 years ago, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, why in the world does nobody around here do fall calving? I said, our calves are staying stagnant through July and August because it's so hot, on our permit at least. And he looks at me and he says, well, because nobody's done it. And I says, well, I'm gonna do it. And that's what I did. And so we try to change things as we feel like in our personal permit, in our personal lives. We try to adapt. We try to change things up that way. But I think, I try to stay out of the political side of it tonight because it just gets my blood really boiling up here. We face that big time on our main permit out to Park Bench. It's 80% Sitla land. And it is an absolute nightmare. They regulate us to death. They sell it out from under us. They sell the seed. They'll come in and harvest the seed that I paid for, that I graze on. I pay top dollar for this feed as if it was a private permit. And so there's just a lot of things that we go through. But I think for the future, I think all we can do is go and lobby against this kind of stuff and try to instead of getting my blood boiling, to try to level with them and reason with these agencies and let them know that we're here for a reason. And Kanab wouldn't exist if we weren't here. Southern Utah wouldn't exist. Utah wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the agriculture community. And so that's what I see in the future. I hope you have anything to say.
Not really. I don't know. I hope it stays. I plan to take over the ranch if my dad will let me. I don't know. I hope it stays fairly good, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I don't know.
Last question I have is why do you do it? And I think we heard a lot of that already, but I'll have the last one.
Hey, why did I do it? Because I love it. I love to work. I love the land. And I tell my kids, sometimes I like to just get on my horse and ride out in the clear blue sky and look at the scenery and look at the cattle and leave the phone at home. Because, and I hope that we can hang on to what we have, onto our permits and our private ground. That's my goal. And just enjoy life like I did when I grew up. But you've heard the things tonight on what we're facing and the things that it was like. When I grew up, I thought Kanab was a wonderful place, and I still do. And I hope that, like mentioned here, the only way that it can stay the same is for the people in Kane County to get behind us and enjoy it along with us. And help us keep some of this ground that we have. And just make the people that come from the east realize that they have more rights on the ground today than they do with all these monuments and things that the regulations and stuff. So I'll let Gavin say what he did, what he was.
Yeah, that's a good question. Why did we do it? Some of the things that come to my mind that I took note on was, the scenery is, to me, I think it's one of the most beautiful places on the earth. So I really like, whether it's a rainy day or snowy day or sunny day, I really enjoy the scenery in our local area. The other is the heritage. I mentioned I'm fifth generation and my kids are sixth, and then just started having grandkids, and hopefully they'll be a seventh. You know? So the heritage goes deep with all these guys. And then I put this on here: liking and dislike, the physical, mental, and working with family. There's great things on all of those, but there's also challenges. But I really do like, you know, the mental and physical challenge. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but when you overcome something, you look back and you have that sense of accomplishment. I like that every day or every season isn't the same. We go through the motions of kind of doing somewhat the same thing, but it's never the same day. And then also continuing the operation and legacy to hopefully, you know, make it self-supportive and make a life that my kids can continue on with too. So there's the monetary part that hopefully we can gain a little bit that way. I'll pass the time on.
All right, so when I asked my grandpa, he said they don't make any more property, they don't make any more land. And then he didn't say that much about, but I knew what he meant. When I get emotional, I always do this, it seems like, I hope my grandpa, and those that came before him know how grateful I am, my boys are, for the work that they put in to keep it, because it's staying hard. I'm sure they wonder why they're doing it a lot of the time, but my oldest boys, they're doing football, wrestling, basketball, baseball. That's another thing that's changing. Sports, in order to compete, takes a lot more time. And here in Kanab, we like to compete, so we're going to put that time in to go win the games we need to win. But sometimes that takes you away from this, what you love. And then every weekend, what he wants to do is go to the ranch with his friends. And we do love to share the land that we have with our friends. If you ask those guys, you want to go to Disneyland this week or Hawaii, they say, no, we just want to go to the ranch. I think, you know, they just sincerely look where they want to be with their free time. They just love it out there. They love the heritage. After this many generations, if you were to lose it, it would be a major, like a death of a family member. And so I think that's why my grandpa does it, is he knows what it's meant to him and what it'll mean to his grandchildren and great grandchildren going on. And I do know that he, as hard as it is, and I don't know if he loves it every day, I think he does love the work.
I told my wife I was gonna tell you the reason I still do it is because it's the most lucrative hobby there is. And she said, you can't say that because that's not true. But I'm the same. I complain a lot about it, because it's hard. It's like Gavin said, family can be difficult, and trying to work with an old farmer rancher and change their mindset, and it's a challenge. But I feel like I owe it to my ancestors. I look around out there and I'm in other places and I see all the hard work that went in. you see these old pole corrals and things. They didn't have mechanical post hole diggers. They dug in the rock and the dirt with shovels and picks. And you see these old fences strung along and all the effort that went into that. These corrals and barns that were put up. We lost the original house out there to a fire. Just so I do it because I look around, I participate in watching my grandkids participate in activities here. And I go to a lot of rural communities and I see a lot of rural young people who grow up in the farming and ranching community. And they are good, hardworking, strong, good citizens to their community. And that's where they come from, is that background. They farm and they ranch, and it builds a ton of character. And the other thing is, it's a sanctuary. Colton talked about that earlier. It is, it's a great place that you can go. There aren't many places you can go that are left, that you can take your family and just enjoy your spot. And we're very fortunate that way. And that, being able to do that means that you're a good steward of the land, not just yours, but everybody around you. And we have great neighbors we farm and ranch next to, and we couldn't do it without them. We help each other out. We hay needs to be put up or whatever. People just show up and things happen. Things just take place. And so that's why I do it, is because it's community, it's family, it's sanctuary, it's character building.
All right, I'll let you start out and then I'll finish up.
Why I do it? Well, I was raised in it, so it's kind of put on me, but
He has to do it.
but why I think I will do it is like everybody's kind of said, I love it. It's awesome, and it really would be terrible if it would stop right here. If the ranching in our family would stop, I would hate that. So I really plan to continue it. I love it. I think it's beautiful.
The reason I do it, like, obviously we're here because we're generational. That's one of the reasons I do it, and it's the heritage. And it's something that I always wanted to do. My main goal in life was, number one, to have a family, but number two was to be able to buy the family ranch, and I've been able to do that. And if it wouldn't have been for my dad and my grandpa, my great-grandpa, my great-great-grandpa, that just worked so hard to get it where it is today. I mean, you say that when you're competing against something, the only people that you don't care if they beat you are your kids. And so I wanted my kids to do better than I did, and obviously I think I'm doing better than my dad did, as far as I'm able to have nicer things. I'm able to progress a little more, and he was able to progress a little more than his dad, and I think that's how it needs to work. I think that's how it works. But I think all too often that happens, and then people think there's all this wealth, right? This wealth built up in the ranch industry or land, as we've been talked about, and then one family member will say, "Hey, I'm going to cash out," and that's the end of it. And so I hope and pray that this can continue on. It is a legacy. It's a heritage. We've had Western legends here that have talked about the ranching and farmers, and I do it because I love it. It is a sanctuary for me. My wife would probably disagree, because I come home pretty angry sometimes and upset, and I whine and moan about how hard the day's been. But it really is just something that is ingrained into me, and I love it. But thank you for letting us do this.
Well, this has been wonderful. We are now going to open it up for questions, and everybody's going to raise your hand. Everybody's going to come around, and you can ask any of these wonderful men. And as your lips starting, I just want you to know how much I appreciate every one of them. We've talked about this for a couple of months, the 6 of us that we're here, and I'm glad. All right, Dave, you're on.
Okay, as a wife of a ranch here, it's been a good life. I like what the young man said about the drone, and I'd like Bruce to share a story about our grandson Ethan and how he's gonna improve ranching.
I got a grandson, Ethan, that lives down in Las Vegas. He's in a lot of, well, not all he does is technology. He comes up here and he's always on his, phone or on an iPod doing games and stuff. And one day I needed some help to go up to, here I am leasing Evan McAllister's place. And I needed to build a fence around it, and it's hard for me to take a post hole pounder and pound a steel post in. And so I asked him if he'd go up and help me pound about 5 or 6 steel posts in. He says, "Oh, Grandpa, I don't know if I can do that." I says, "Well, it won't take us very long, about 15 minutes to go up and pound those posts in and string a little bit of wire." He says, "Well, Grandpa, I don't believe I can do it." And then I talked to him. I said, "Well, what do you think about the beef, the stuff that you get?" He says, "Oh, I can." He says, "I'm a good cook. I can go to the store and buy the beef and come home and cook it." I said, "Oh, so you think it's marked with the store?" He said, "No." He says, "I know that you raise it, then you work hard." And I said, "Well, when you're buying that beef and when you're at home and stuff, you think your poor old grandpa out there on that tractor, those steel posts in and stuff." He says, "Oh, Grandpa, I feel sorry for you." He says, "I'll create a robot to help you." You know, that's just the way some of them, and I don't know, I know they know wrong, but I think he thinks that it's, you know, he didn't want to do it because he knew it was kind of hard work. And so I said, "Well, when you get your robot ready, then you let me know and I'll use it."
There. Bruce, I just got a question. I didn't hear the 1 year one that you said that your dad bought the ranch from Patty.
Yeah, from your dad, Mark Schwab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What year?
I think it's around the 1950s, if I remember right, about
Sorry,
1951.
we were teenagers. We were like the 9th grade. It was like 1962 or 3.
Around 60.
Was it around 60s?
Yeah, I grew up on that ranch.
Oh, I knew that.
I go every summer, so.
I just remember we moved from Johnson Canyon up to the ranch because it was a lot cooler, and I loved it up there. And it was a lot prettier than where we were at Johnson. I love those beautiful things.
Is the old Ford tractor still there?
The old Ford tractor still there.
The old hay
Still
baler?
running. In fact, we had it running.
The old hay baler? Was the old hay baler still sitting there?
Yeah, the old hay baler.
Okay. Unfortunately, Pumpernickel's gone though, huh? The orange cat. Yeah. My sister, the reason between her got named him Bertha Erman to Pumpernickel. And that cat probably lived to be 25. He's the size of a bobcat. So, thank you.
I'm a relatively new transplant to Kanab, about 6 years, and I'm familiar with the monument, but my question is, did any of you guys ranch or have cattle on the, where the monument is now? All of you?
All
All
of
of you, okay, thank you.
All right, everybody, can we give our entire panel here another round of applause? Especially because we know not only did they speak about this, right? It's such a part of their heart, but also if there's one thing we're all taking away tonight, it's how busy each and every one of you are. So we know taking out this time, it really does mean a lot to us. Also personally, I just have to say, I appreciate how much you spoke to family and community and heritage and the love of it. And thank you for being here tonight, because you've let all of us be a part of that, and that really means a lot to me.
Thank you.
And then also thanks again to our Heritage Board, who works diligently on these types of projects and many others. So please keep your eye peeled. As you may have noticed, if you've been around for a while, we're trying to make this Back When series a regular thing. So just if you follow the Kanab Museum on Facebook or Instagram, or take the local paper, or just check out the boards at the grocery stores. Whenever we have events like this come up, we always try to advertise them using those methods. And that's all I have. So thank you all for coming. Travel safely and have a good night.